Hi all, and welcome to another video from Ms. Robbie's classroom. I'm your teacher advisor, Ms. Robbie, and today we will have another video on our series of the self-learning home task for the third quarter in English 7. For this clip, you will need your English 7 home task for week 4, some pieces of bond paper for your outputs, and a pen. Pay attention when you hear the bell sound. That means you may need to pause the video in order to do the task given. Then resume the video once you're done. And remember to be on time. Follow a schedule of tasks you need to accomplish so you can submit your outputs on time. This lesson is based on the milk. Explain how a selection may be influenced by culture, history, environment, or other factors. So our goals at the end of this clip is that you'll be able to point out significant events in the selection, explain how a selection may be influenced by culture, history, environment, or other factors, and show enthusiasm in promoting awareness to one's cultural or historical origins. Before we go on, let's do a before reading activity, which is unlocking of difficult words. Look for the meaning of the following words. Number 1, beads. 2, clamorously. 3, quivered. 4, sonorous. 5, snugly. 6, sullenness. 7, supple. 8, threshold. You may use a dictionary or search it through the internet. Are you ready? Let's go! It's checking time. Let's see how well you did. Look for the meaning of the following words. Beads. A small piece of glass, stone, or similar material, typically rounded and perforated for threading with others as a necklace or rosary, or for sewing onto fabric. Clamorously. Making or marked by loud outcry or sustained din. Quivered. Tremble or shake with a slight rapid motion. Sonorous, producing sound as when struck. Snugly, in a comfortable, warm, and cozy or well-protected manner. Sullenness, showing a brooding ill humor or silent resentment, morose or sulking. Supple, bending and moving easily and gracefully. Flexible. Threshold, a strip of wood, metal, or stone forming the bottom of a doorway and crossed in entering a house or room. Were you able to get the correct meaning? Perfect! Remember them as we go with the story. Let's first know a little bit about the author or writer of the wedding dance, Amador de Guio. Amador de Guio was born in the Ilocos province of the Philippines in 1912. He began writing poetry in high school and published his first poem before he graduated. Throughout his career, he taught at a number of schools in the Philippines and also worked as a lawyer, editor, reporter, and public relations officer for the Filipino government. In his writing, de Guio seeks to establish a pure Filipino voice distinct from its colonizers. Even in English, de Guio's writing is Filipino in essence. In the wedding dance, he draws upon the culture of his ancestors to explore Filipino traditions along with the universal themes of love, suffering, and societal expectations. For this lesson, we will be talking about Amador de Guio's The Wedding Dance. Awio reached for the upper horizontal log, which served as the edge of the high-head threshold. Clinging to the log, he lifted himself with one bound that carried him across to the narrow door. He slid back the cover, stepped inside, and then pushed the cover back in place. After some moments during which he seemed to wait, he talked to the listening darkness, I'm sorry this had to be done. I'm really sorry, but neither of us can help it. The sound of the gangsas beat through the walls of the dark house like muffled roars of falling waters. The woman, who had moved to the start when the sliding door opened, had been hearing the gangsas for she did not know how long. There was a sudden rush of fire in her. She gave no sign that she heard Awiyaw, but continued to sit unmoving in the darkness. But Awiyaw knew that she heard him, and his heart pitied her. He crawled on all fours to the middle of the room. He knew exactly where the stove was. With bare fingers, he stirred the covered smoldering embers and blew into the stove. When the coals began to glow, Awiyaw put pieces of pine on them, then full round logs as his own. The room brightened. "Why don't you go out," he said, "and join the dancing women?" He felt a pang inside him, because what he said was really not the right thing to say, and because the woman did not stir. "You should join the dancers," he said, as if nothing happened. He looked at the woman huddled in a corner of the room, leaning against the wall. The stove fire played with strange moving shadows and lights upon her face. She was partly sullen, but her sullenness was not because of anger or hate. Go out and dance. If you really don't hate me for this separation, go out and dance. One of the men will see you dance well. He will like your dancing. He will marry you. Who knows but that with him, you will be luckier than you were with me." "I don't want any man," she said sharply. "I don't want any other man." He felt relieved that at least she talked. "You know very well that I won't want any other woman either. You know that, don't you? Lumnai, you know it, don't you?" She did not answer him. "You know it, Lumnai, don't you?" he repeated. "Yes, I know," she said weakly. "It's not my fault," he said, feeling relieved. "You cannot blame me. I've been a good husband to you." "Neither can you blame me," she said. She seemed about to cry. "No, you have been very good to me. You've been a good wife. I've nothing to say against you." He set some of the burning wood in place. "It's only that a man must have a child. 7 harvests are just too long to wait. Yes, we've waited too long. We should have another chance before it's too late for both of us." This time, the woman steered, stretched her right leg out, and bent her left leg in. She wound the blanket more snugly around herself. "You know I have done my best," she said. "I've prayed to Kabunyan much. I've sacrificed many chickens in my prayers." "Yes, I know. You remember how angry you were once when you came home from your work in the terrace because I butchered one of your pigs without your permission? I did it to appease Kabunyan because, like you, I wanted to have a child. What can I do?" "Kabunyan does not see fit for us to have a child," he said. He stirred the fire. The spark rose through the crackles of the flames. The smoke and soot went up the ceiling. Lumnai looked down and unconsciously started to pull at the rattan that kept the split bamboo flooring in place. She tugged at the rattan flooring. Each time she did this, split bamboo went up and came down with a slight rattle. The gong of the dancers clamorously called in her ear through the walls. Awiyaw went to the corner where Lumnai sat, paused before her, looked at her bronzed and sturdy face, then turned to where the jars of water stood piled one over the other. Awiyaw took a coconut cup and dipped it in the top jar and drank. Lumnai had filled the jars from the mountain creek early that evening. "I came home," he said, because I did not find you among the dancers. Of course, I'm not forcing you to come if you don't want to join my wedding ceremony. I came to tell you that Madulimay, although I'm marrying her, can never become as good as you are. She's not as strong in planting beans, not as fast in cleaning water jars, not as good keeping a house clean. You are one of the best wives in the whole village. That has not done me any good, has it? She said. She looked at him lovingly. She almost seemed to smile. He put the coconut cup aside on the floor and came closer to her, held her face between his hands, and looked longingly at her beauty. But her eyes looked away. Never again will he hold her face. The next day, she will not be his anymore. She would go back to her parents. He let go of her face, and she bent to the floor again and looked at her fingers as they tugged softly at the split bamboo floor. This house is yours, he said. I built it for you. Make it your own. Live in it as long as you wish. I will build another house for Madulimay. I have no need for a house, she said slowly. I'll go to my own house. My parents are old. They will need help in planting of the beans and the pounding of the rice. I will give you the field that I dug out of the mountains during the first year of our marriage, he said. You know I did it for you. You helped me make it for the two of us. I have no use for any field, she said. He looked at her, and turned away and became silent. They were silent for a time. Go back to the dance, she said finally. It's not right for you to be here. They will wonder where you are, and Madulimay will not feel good. Go back to the dance. I'll feel better if you could come and dance for the last time. The gangsas are playing. You know that I cannot. Lumnay, he said tenderly. Lumnay, if I did this, it's because of my need for a child. You know that life is not worth living without a child. The man has mocked me behind my back. You know that. I know it, she said. I will pray that Kabunyan will bless you and Madulimay. She bit her lips now, and shook her head wildly and sobbed. She thought of the 7 harvests that had passed, the high hopes they had in the beginning of their new life, the day he took her away from her parents across the roaring river on the other side of the mountain, the trip up the trail which they had to climb, the steep canyon which they had to cross. The waters boiled in her mind in forms of white and jade and roaring silver. The waters tolled and growled, resounded in the thunderous echoes through the walls of the stiff cliffs. They were far away now from somewhere on the tops of the other ranges, and they had looked carefully at the buttresses of rocks they had to step on. A slip would have meant death. They both drank of the water, then rested on the other bank before they made the final climb to the other side of the mountain. She looked at his face, with the fire playing upon his features, hard and strong and kind. He had a sense of lightness in his way of saying things which often made her and the village people laugh. How proud she had been of his humor. The muscles were taut and firm and bronze and compact in her hold upon his skull. How frank his bright eyes were. She looked at his body that carved out the mountain's 5 fields for her. His wide and supple torso heaved as if a slab of shining lumber were heaving. His arms and legs flowed down in the fluent muscles. He was strong, and for that she had lost him. She flung herself upon his knees and clung to them. "Owiyaw, Owiyaw, my husband," she cried. "I did everything to have a child," she said passionately in a hoarse whisper. "Look at me," she cried. "Look at my body." Then it was full of promise. It could dance. It could work fast in the fields. It could climb the mountains fast. Even now it's firm, full. But Owiyaw, I'm useless. I must die. It will not be right to die, he said, gathering her in his arms. Her whole warm, naked breast quivered against his own. She clung now to his neck, and her hand lay upon his right shoulder. Her hair flowed down in cascades of gleaming darkness. I don't care about the fields, she said. I don't care about the house. I no care for anything but you. I'll have no other man. And you'll always be fruitless. I'll go back to my father. I'll die. Then you hate me, he said. If you die, it means you hate me. You don't want me to have a child. You don't want my name to live on in our tribe. She was silent. If I don't try a second time, he explained, it means I'll die. Nobody will get the fields I've carved out of the mountains. Nobody will come after me. If you fail the second time, she said thoughtfully. The voice was a shudder. No, I don't want you to fail. If I fail, he said, I'll come back to you. Then both of us will die together. Both of us will vanish from the life of our tribe. The gongs thundered through the walls of their house, sonorous and far away. I'll keep my beads, she said. Awiyaw, let me keep my beads, she half whispered. You will keep the beads. They come from far-off times. My grandmother said they come from up north, from the slant-eyed people across the sea. You keep them, Lumnai. They're worth 20 fields. I'll keep them because they stand for the love you have for me, she said. I love you. I love you and have nothing to give. She took herself away from him, for a voice was calling out to him from outside. Awiyaw! Awiyaw! Oh, Awiyaw! They're looking for you at the dance. I'm not in a hurry. The elders will scold you. You had better go. Not until you tell me that it's all right with you. It's all right with me. He clasped her hands. I do this for the sake of the tribe, he said. I know, she said. He went to the door. Awiyaw! He stopped, as if suddenly hit by a spear. In pain, he turned to her. Her face was in agony. It pained him to leave. She had been wonderful to him. What was it that made a man wish for a child? What was it in life, in the work, in the field, in the planting and harvest, in the silence of the night, in the communing with husband and wife, in the whole life of the tribe itself, that made man wish for the laughter and speech of a child? Suppose he changed his mind. Why did the unwritten law demand, anyway, that a man, to be a man, must have a child to come after him? And if he was fruitless, but he loved Lumnai, it was like taking away of his life to leave her like this. Awiyaw, she said, and her eyes seemed to smile in delight. The beads! He turned back and walked to the farthest corner of the room, to the trunk where they kept their worldly possessions, his battle axe and his spear points, her betel nut box and her beads. He dug out from the darkness the beads which had been given to him by his grandmother to give to Lumnai. The white and jade and deep orange obsidians shone in the firelight. She suddenly clung to him, clung to his neck as if she would never let him go. Awiyaw! Awiyaw, it's hard, she gasped, and she closed her eyes and buried her face in his neck. A call for him from the outside repeated. Her grip loosened, and he hurried out into the night. Lumnai sat for some time in the darkness. Then she went to the door and opened it. The moonlight struck her face. The moonlight spilled itself on the whole village. She could hear the throbbing of the gangsas coming to her through the caverns of the other houses. She knew that all the houses were empty, that the whole tribe was at the dance. Only she was absent. And yet, was she not the best dancer of the village? Did she not have the most lightness and grace? Could she not alone, among all women, dance like a bird tripping for grains on the ground, beautifully timed to the beat of the gangsas? Did not the men praise her supple body, and the women envy the way she stretched her hands like the wings of the mountain eagle, now and then as she danced? How long ago did she dance at her own wedding? Tonight, all the women who counted, who once danced in her honor, were dancing now in honor of another whose claim was that perhaps she could give her husband a child. "It's not right. It's not right," she cried. "How does she know? How can anybody know? It's not right," she said. Suddenly she found courage. She would go to the dance. She would go to the chief of the village, to the elders, to tell them it was not right. Awia was hers. Nobody could take him away from her. Let her be the first woman to complain, to denounce the unwritten rule that man may take another woman. She would tell Awia to come back to her. He surely would relent. Was not their love as strong as the river? She made for the other side of the village where the dancing was. There was a flaming glow over the whole place. A great bonfire was burning. The gangsas clamored more loudly now, and it seemed they were calling to her. She was near at last. She could see the dancers clearly now. The men leaped lightly with their gangsas as they circled the dancing women decked in feast garments and beads, tripping on the ground like graceful birds, following their men. Her heart warmed to the flaming call of the dance. Strange heat in her blood welled up, and she started to run. But the gleaming brightness of the bonfire commanded her to stop. Did anybody see her approach? She stopped. What if somebody had seen her coming? The flames of the bonfire leaped in countless sparks, which spread and rose like yellow points and died out in the night. The blaze reached out to her like a spreading radiance. She didn't have the courage to break into the wedding feast. Lumnai walked away from the dancing ground, away from the village. She thought of the new clearing of beans which Awiyao and she had started to make only 4 moons before. She followed the trail above the village. When she came to the mountain stream, she crossed it carefully. Nobody held her hand, and the stream water was very cold. The trail went up again, and she was in the moonlight shadows among the trees and shrubs. Slowly she climbed the mountain. When Lumnai reached the clearing, she could see from where she stood the blazing bonfire at the edge of the village, where the wedding was. She could hear the far-off clamor of the gongs, still rich in their sonorousness, echoing from mountain to mountain. The sound did not mock her. They seemed to call far to her, to speak to her in the language of unspeaking love. She felt the pull of their gratitude for her sacrifice. Her heartbeat began to sound in her like many gangsas. Lumnai thought of Awiyao as the Awiyao she had known long ago, a strong, muscular boy carrying heavy loads of fuel logs down the mountains to his home. She had met him one day as she was on her way to fill her clay jars with water. He had stopped at the spring to drink and rest, and she had made him drink the cool mountain water from her coconut shell. After that, it didn't take him long to decide to throw his spear on the stairs of his father's house in token on his desire to marry her. The mountain clearing was cold in the freezing moonlight. The wind began to stir the leaves of the bean plants. Lumnai looked for a big rock on which to sit down. The bean plants now surrounded her, and she was lost among them. A few more weeks, a few more months, a few more harvests. What did it matter? She would be holding the bean flowers, soft in the texture, silken almost, but moist where the dew got into them. Silver to look at, silver on the light blue, blooming whiteness when the morning comes. Stretching of the bean pods full length from the hearts of the wilting petals would go on. Lumnai's fingers moved a long, long time. Now let's apply what you just learned. Go to page 7 of your home task. Determine whether each statement is true or false. Like in number 1. The story says aloud that a man who loves unconditionally should give up his or her happiness for the beloved. Correct answer is true. Are you ready to answer the rest? Let's go! It's checking time. Let's see how well you did. Go back to page 7 of your home task. Determine whether each statement is true or false. Number 1 has already been answered for you. Number 2. The title speaks of the dance that happened in the wedding of Awiyaw and Madulimay. Correct answer is true. Number 3. Awiyaw and Lumnai still confess their love for each other in the midst of their separation. Correct answer is true. Number 4. The presence of darkness in the story symbolizes the sadness in their hearts, in contrast to the embers in the fire log that represents their strong and deep love for each other. Correct answer is true. Number 5. The beads given to Lumnai by Awiyaw will be given to Madulimay in the wedding. False. Number 6. Awiyaw is more courageous than Lumnai to surrender his love and take all the hurt that goes with it. Correct answer is false. It's assessment time. Go to page 7 of your home task. Answer the following questions. Number 1. What do you think is the story about? Number 2. What was the conflict of the husband and wife? Number 3. Why do you think Awiyaw married his second wife? Number 4. What are the expectations for men in Awiyaw's culture? What about for women? Number 5. If you were Awiyaw, would you do the same? Why or why not? Number 6. Do you think Lumnai had no hurt feelings on the situation? Why do you say so? Number 7. How does your culture influence your decisions? Does it affect your plans for your future? Answer your following questions in a piece of paper and submit to your teacher for checking. Good luck! Enrichment activities. Research at least one selection or story influenced by the culture, history, or environment of the varied regions of the Philippines. Below the copy of this selection or story, write a 4-sentence paragraph explanation. Now you're ready for Lesson 5. Until next time, this is your teacher advisor, Ms. Robbie. Happy studying, guys!